Hello, this is Grandmaster Gary Fasty Fontanes with another episode of MMA Power Talk. Sport karate illustrator at the Dojo Giant, teaching people things that, man, you maybe not aware of, but you will be. Today we're going all the way back to the days when men were men, when fighters were fighters, where you actually had to hit the person to get a point. In addition to that, this gentleman here was like a superhero to me. Man, I was a mere mortal. This guy was walking around like Superman. And anyhow, the bottom line is that there's different forms of martial arts, and there's different people who represented it. But this gentleman here is on my 300 because he literally leads by example. We're going to hear a lot of stuff about not just him and his son. He's on a tight schedule, so I'm going to get directly to the point. Now, if I pronounce his name wrong, if he hits me, I'm going to sue you. You guys will be my witnesses. This is Sijo, Abdul, Mutakabbir. Are you there, sir?
I'm there, good brother. How you doing?
Was that close enough?
Brother, you're a beautiful brother. I always love your spirit, man, your energy. Well,
I appreciate.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you, and I would have to say that having a conversation with you and knowing that I'm one of those few people that make you smile, well, I feel warm and fuzzy about that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I just want to begin by saying, brother, I thank the Creator for blessing me to be alive in this day and time in the state of mind that I am of a positive individual, and I thank the Creator for blessing me to be able to communicate with a person like you with a positive mind in this day and time where there's so much different anarchy and corruption and ignorant individuals that's doing so many diabolical things. So it's truly an honor.
It's a blessing. Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. Since this is not about me, it's about you, so I want to find out because I'm really curious, and we want to know, in the beginning, was it motivation, desperation, inspiration when you actually started in martial arts? So if you give me when you started and what motivated you or inspired or what have you to do it and what style it was. So let's talk about the beginning.
Well, I started training in martial arts when I was about 11 years old, between 10 and 11 years old. And growing up in 267 West 118th Street in Harlem. This was a time when, the only communication was with your knuckles and you had to have heart. So, you had to bow your fist up, you had to fight your way from going to school and coming back home. So my father was a professional fighter, so he was taught us how to defend ourselves. So it was sometimes during those days when I fought sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4 times a day, and this is without exaggeration. So during one particular episode in a fight, I had gotten a situation with this particular friend of mine who later on became a professional boxer during the same time of Sugar Ray Leonard and Hagler and Hearns when they were champions. He was also an upcoming champion. And me and this guy, we grew up and we fought that particular day, and he kind of got a blowing a little bit when my father grabbed me. So I got hot. So my father took me upstairs, and so I always wanted to get this guy back. So at that time, my sister, she was dating this particular individual that was an exterminator, and he was exterminating the house, and I was so hot. And the guy, he gave me some wisdom about spirituality, but I didn't really want to hear it at the time. And so he said, "Have you ever heard of karate?" I said, "Karate." I said, "Karate's for girls. You kick and punch. I don't want to know no karate." I said, I want to just box. He said, "Well, I got a karate school, and maybe, I'll take you for a ride one day, and you can come see what we do." So he took me for a ride, and it was up in Queens, and I was living in Harlem, and I just wanted to get in the car just to be able to, take a ride in the car because, in those days, my family's poor. We was happy just to get on the bus. So when we took this ride, he took me into this place called the Dojo, and we sat down, and I watched these individuals come out with these white uniforms on, and they all made this particular motion and of courtcy and respect. So I say us, and they all just had this disciplinary mode, and it like sent chills throughout my spine. I said, "Wow, I want to learn this." So I sit there and looked at it, and I watched that class for a while, and that was basically the last I seen of that. So then what happened was I had was always intrigued with that. So my family, again, like I said, we were poor, so I went down 42nd Street one day, and I liberated 2 books. That's a nice way of saying, what I mean? I don't want to say what I said. But I liberated 2 books called This is Karate and The Way of Karate. And I took these 2 books home, And I got
wait, we got to backtrack that. We got to backtrack that. He was so hungry for the knowledge that he had to do a magical act. And then let me just interject for a second, only because we want to make sure that we at least dot some I's and cross some T's. So I didn't know you was originally from Harlem. I'm from Spanish Harlem. I'm from an I-19 between 2nd and 3rd. Renegade of Harlem, you know. So that's where I'm from originally. And then we moved up to a better neighborhood called the South Bronx. But so who is this person? You got me intrigued. You got this cliffhanger. You went to this karate school. Whose school was it? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember because I was too young at the time. I don't
remember
his name. You know what I mean? I wish I did. I seen him one time in a tournament at a long time ago at one of the great masters that passed. I forgot that particular person's name too that passed. I think it was.
Wow.
I think it was what was his name? An individual in Philadelphia. It was his name, Collie Griffin. Collie Griffin. He was at Collie Griffin.
Oh my God, Collie Griffin. Rest in peace to Collie Griffin. Oh, that was one of my people, Kaju Kembo and Kembo. Oh man.
Yes, sir. And we spoke.
All right.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just shut up. By the way, if you don't hear me, it's because I put myself on mute. You know, because I don't want to interject. But man, that's a wonderful story. You liberated the 2 books. Continue.
Yeah, I read these 2 books. And I just basically studied them, and I mimicked the illustrations of the books over and over and over again, and it's played glass windows to the point where, I basically really believed that I became one of the illustrations. You know, animation of one of the illustrations through my spirit. You know, so I truly believe I became a karate man because I had no one to teach me, and then eventually, what had happened, I begged my family so much that my mother, I was very serious with this, so she gave me $100, and I went and took this $100, no, she didn't give me $100. I'm sorry, my older brother gave me $100, and I took this $100 and I went and I joined Master Henry Cho's school on 23rd Street on 8th Avenue when he was back there, Master Henry Cho. So I trained with Julio LaSalle and those guys way back then. I was still about 14 years old, and I only could stay for 1 month. So I just remembered everything he taught me and studied from these 2 books and so forth. And then eventually I used to go to my clubhouse and where all my friends was, and I used to lock the door and tell them, well, everybody want to get out, they got to fight their way out. So I wanted to try to see if this stuff really worked. So I used to do my martial arts with my friends to the point where they got so sick of me that they started getting guys that really knew how to fight in the martial arts and so forth to basically come challenge me. So I used to fight these guys all the time. So I used to basically just have a lot of fights in Harlem. I mean, 25, 50, hundreds of fights throughout the years. This lasted almost from 13 to about 15. And then one day, I met an individual they brought to the clubhouse. This guy had bell-bottom shoes on, square-tip shoes, bell-bottom pants, and an afro. And he was a short guy, and he came in real humble. And so I was a little arrogant by then because I believed in my martial arts was supreme, what I've learned and so forth. Because I was already a fighter, so I believed I was a good fighter. So he came to my clubhouse, and he had basically, he asked me certain questions and so forth. He said, you know how to kick? I said, yeah, I know how to kick, which is a crazy kick I created. He said, you know how to do form? I said, yeah, I know how to form. Some crazy form I created. You know how to break? I said, I know how to break. And so I was breaking boards. Anyway, so he said, well, let me see when you kick. I did some more crazy kicks. So as I did it, he threw a side kick and threw it to my neck and held the kick out. And my heart just jumped because the only one I ever seen do a kick like that was Bruce Lee. So, oh, my God, this guy's a real martial artist. And he said, you do any form? So slowly but surely I was losing more confidence in myself. And I said, yeah, I did a form. So I did some more crazy form. And then he did this beautiful form. I said, wow, this guy's awesome. And so then he said, do you break? At that time, I lost doubt. I break a little bit. So he said this cinder block. He said, well, I'm going to break.
Wait a minute. Wait. I gotta stop because you know what you're doing. And guys, those of you who are listening, you're hearing the true stories. And if you notice, there's a lot of commonalities with people who aren't able to afford martial arts. But when we took lessons, whether it was for 1 day or 1 week, 1 month, we cherished those moments. And then we took that and practiced it. I used to punch trees. Anyone who said they did martial arts. And I would take somebody, if I had a top, just the top was enough. You take a uniform, if one person wore the belt, one person wore the pants, one person wore the top, and the next day we would trade it off. So those of you who have been fortunate enough to have your parents invest and have the opportunity to invest, man, some of you just blow it. I mean, we had to do whatever it took, including inventing and creating. Is that correct, sir?
Absolutely, including liberating books.
All right, I'm going to put myself on mute again. That was awesome. I'm curious to find out who this was. Maybe, I don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you who this individual was. So anyway, when he was getting ready to break this cinder block, he said, I'm going to break it. He had his hand towards his chest. He said, I'm going to break it from a short distance. So I looked at this guy and said, yeah, good. Now I'm going to be able to laugh at him in a sense because you're going to break his hand. So he hit it and he didn't break it. So before I was getting ready to laugh, he picked his foot up and he stomped and it crushed. I said, oh, man, this dude is for real. So I sat there, and I sat there in the dark. I cut the lights and I sat there and I said, man, I got to find this guy and train with this guy. So he told me his name, and I'm going to tell you who his name is. This name of this particular person, who my first authentic instructor was, that trained with a long period of time, was Monroe Morrow, now known as Abdul Musawir.
Oh, wow. Wait, now you just blew me away with that one. That was, if I'm correct, isn't that Earl Bennett's instructor also?
That's Earl Bennett's instructor. That's Happy's Crump instructor. That's
holy, right, Happy Crump, rest in peace, was from the Boogie Down Bronx. Holy smoke.
T. Taylor's instructor. All of those individuals.
Rest in peace to T. Taylor.
Yep. We all come out the same.
And wasn't he the gentleman that also crossed over? He was teaching shorter combat, and then he started doing, I think, Tai Chi and some other stuff years after, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's still doing that just like me. I do Tai Chi and all that, too. I do all of that.
Whoa. Okay, let me put myself on mute because I'm being edumacated. Edumacated.
Yeah. So when he broke that and he left like mysterious. He just disappeared out of my life. For at that time, I guess I was like 15, and so I was on a search to try to find this individual. For years, I tried to find a Monroe Morrow, like on a quest. But in the meantime, I just kept training. I tried to remember what he said and remember what he showed me, and that basically put that Bushido spirit in me stronger, where I really wanted to really fell in love with the martial art from when I seen a real live person do what I seen in books. So at one time, I went to Charles Evan Hughes High School, and I seen an individual getting a little verbal confrontation with three guys. And as he was talking, one guy pushed him, and this guy threw a hook kick, a beautiful hook kick like Jerry Fontenay. He had legs like you. Beautiful kick. He hit this guy in the head. So immediately, I didn't know who he was, but I just ran to his aid, and I broke up one of the guys, and we basically became good friends. And I asked him, I said, man, who taught you to kick like that? And he said, my teacher I'm trying to find. I said, what is his name? He said his name was Monroe Morrow. I said, Monroe Morrow? So it's like, we became close just over Monroe's name. So it was three of us. So we called ourselves almost like the three musketeers of the martial arts. Me, him, and this individual named Charles Hercules. And this particular person I came to his aid, his name was Charles Stupart. That was his name. So us three came. So what happened was we started basically sharing what we knew of information, and we just basically started putting into practice by basically trying to spar with other different martial arts that were real martial artists. And so what we used to do, basically go pretend. Like he would pretend he was the instructor and I was a student, or I would go to the student, he would pretend that I was the instructor, he was a student, and that's how we used to compete and fight against other guys. Because those days, a lot of people couldn't afford schools, so you had schools in their basements, at schools in clubs house, at schools in different places, just like they do today. So we used to go to those places and spar, because in those particular days, martial arts was more mystical. Everybody was in art like it is today. Today is just a sport, and people don't appreciate the value of it. But in those days, people appreciated the value of it. So that was my beginning of how I started. And then one day we found out it was an individual teaching at the PAL in the Bronx. And so we heard about this guy. So we all promoted ourselves at that particular time, the green belt and purple belt. So we thought we was qualified because we was beating all the average green belts and purple belts up. So we thought we was qualified for that rank. So we heard about this guy. It was real good. He was teaching a lot of people free in the PAL. So we all ran over there to his school, and we all had our belts on. We had our black gis on because we wanted to be rebellious. Everybody wearing white gis. And we went into that school, and lo and behold, who we ran into? Face-to-face, Monroe Morrow. Whoa. We ran into Monroe.
Is this the PAL on Webster Avenue?
That's the PAL on Webster Avenue.
Holy smokes. Now, you are blowing me away here. And by the way, your ability to tell stories are phenomenal. It's a movie. I'm going through the scenes, and you got me as a cliffhanger, man. I love it, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Oh, my God. So my role model was teaching the PAL, and this is a gentleman who literally has never been given 1/1000th of a percent of credit for the impact that he has done in the martial arts. And there's no way in life I'm not. You don't have to call the cops, because I'm going to get everyone, including him, who's alive, that are pioneers and legends, to tell their story on Dojang, because it's the right thing to do. Okay, let me shut up again. Great story. Now you're in the PAL, but you're wearing a belt. Uh-oh.
Yes. I'm wearing this belt, and I'm running to Monroe. And the reason why, I always give credit to Monroe, because what you just said, and I'm going to echo those words. Monroe is what you call an unsung martial art master that never was given the credibility, even up to the day, of these great warriors that he produced, like me and Bennett and Happy Crump and T. Taylor, and and it's more that basically that we can talk about, and it's go on and on and on. But these guys, they went into these different eras, and they basically somewhere they forgot the ties with Monroe, because he was the youngest of all the great masters of Moses, the great Dr. Moses Powell.
So I do have a question, only because I don't know, and this is a side note, maybe it's because I spoke to a gentleman briefly. We were supposed to do a power talk. It didn't work out. Obviously, he's busy. But did Phil McRae train there also, or does he come from one of those?
Absolutely. Phil McRae is my
Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I taught me and Ben taught Phil McRae how to fight and everything. Matter of fact, wow. I'm the senior of all of them. I'm the senior.
Wow.
I taught Bennett how to fight. I taught Bennett how to fight when he first came. Bennett came off a boat from Jamaica and lived with my family for 7 years. You see?
Whoa!
So I'm Bennett senior.
Wow! You heard it here first, baby. See, this is the thing most people think about, and obviously we're gonna get to, because this is a superhero story, no doubt about it. Because I knew some of what you're mentioning, but it was more like a rumor, because obviously by the time I get onto the scene coming from Taekwondo, your guys were swarming. It's a whole different monster, But before that, okay, so now you're the PAL. I'm curious to find out what he does about that belt.
Well, then we got to look at first. This is before the birth of Abdul Mutakabbir. The story I'm telling you is before the birth of Abdul Mutakabbir. This is when I was known as Barry Savage Jackson. I was known as Barry Savage Jackson during those days.
All right, hopefully we have, the statute of limitations have passed, because that sounds like a dangerous dude from Harlem with the middle name of Savage.
Yeah, and that name Savage was given to me by Monroe, because I fought like a savage. You see, these were the days I come up with Fred Miller and Hawk Frazier and those great warriors and so forth. And you know what I'm saying? And Monroe used to bring those guys. Well, I'm skipping time frame, but let me go back to PAL. So anyway, with PAL, so me and Charles and the other Charles, we go in PAL, and we went face to face with Monroe. And we looked at Monroe, and our whole tail became between our legs. Our spirit just dropped, because he looked at our ranks. The first thing, he didn't look at our eyes, he looked at our ranks. He said, "Oh, so you guys are green belts?" It was baffling. And he said, "Well, listen, if y'all want to train, that's fine, but y'all got to take your ranks off." We said, "No problem." And so he gave us 3 white belts. He put us all the way at the end of the line. And so we trained. And he trained us so hard that, and my heart and my lungs was coming out of my mouth. I was so depleted of energy when I left that class. And so what happened? We went and bought us some white geese, and we trained with Monroe at the time. We were the last of the 3 out of about 50 to maybe more of his students, the last. But we trained so hard, within a month time, we was on that first line. That first line with Lamont Thornton was on that first line also, because that's one of Monroe's 2 students. If people don't know that, Lamont Thornton. Okay, and so hold up, wait a minute. So I'm over here thinking we're gonna do this, nice little talk with my man who I looked up to so much, and he's dropping bombs and jewels and talking about lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, you're killing it, man! I loved it, and this is upsetting to me personally. I should know of that particular history. It's not written. It's not documented, but we're going to get this thing rolling. It's only the right thing to do. Thank you very much. Keep it moving, sir. So at that time, so we just kept training to eventually we became, right next to Lamont as his next top three. But Lamont was always my senior because he was always a green belt when I was a white belt. So eventually what happened, a lot of the guys fell off, and we got to start getting new guys in because Monroe used to train us so hard. So then we had met an individual that came in. He came with some high water pants and so forth, and he came up with like a short jacket, and I knew he was from Harlem, but I didn't know anything about Jamaicans during that time, so I didn't know who the hell he was. So he came in, and I spoke to him. He was a real nice brother, but I felt a sense of spirit, a vicious spirit in him, and I felt a very strong discipline in him. So I befriended myself with him, and we became close. And that particular individual was Earl Bennett. So Earl Bennett, me and him became close. And I seen he was very strong and very, very determined. And so eventually what happened, Bennett grew in the ranks quick. And so I used to basically always work with him and talk to him and things like that. But he didn't have a place, so I invited him, he introduced him to my family, and he stayed with us for 7 years. And so as he stayed with us, eventually, we had basically went back and forth, trained with Monroe, and to the point where we started staying in Monroe School. We lived in the side of the school at the Dynamic Karate Studio. That's what it was called on Sherman Avenue, on 61st Street on Sherman Avenue, where Julia LaSalle used to teach us boxing.
Hey, wait, hold on a second. Did you just say Sherman Avenue?
Yeah, Sherman Avenue.
I lived in 164th in Sheridan. That was next to the Met.
Yeah, we live right on the. We used to right the 161st.
Oh my gosh! In 1971, we moved to the Bronx, and there was a karate school there, and the instructor was a black guy. And I've asked people, they don't even know who the heck that was, and you just freaking killed it. It was right. Anyway,
that was us.
Oh my gosh! There was a Met supermarket right there in the corner.
Exactly. And Julio LaSalle, which was a legendary boxer from the Bronx, he used to teach us because he was a good friend of Monroe's. So we used to be in there. And so what Monroe used to do, Monroe used to take us down to the Music Palace and the Pagoda Theater and the Sun Singing. We used to look at the martial art movies all the time, and that's how he used to basically get us strong into the spirit of the martial arts. They used to take us down to the Japanese movie down on Broadway. We used to show all of the samurai movies and stuff like that there. So we used to look at all these movies. So we used to be with Monroe all the time. And then Monroe would take the greatest champions at that time, the greatest champions like Fred Miller and Hawk Frazier and it was so many others that came in and so forth. Earl Monroe used to come down there, and all these guys. We used to go to the Nisei Goju school, or even Ron Van Cleef and all these guys. They used to come down to school. We used to spar these guys. And Monroe used to always say, these are all your seniors, but eventually you're all going to be better than them. He always put that into me and Bennett's head. He said, eventually you guys are going to be better than them. Y'all just be humble because it's not your time yet. And so we used to spar these guys all the time. And, man, these guys, hit us so hard, man, that if you was a coward, you wouldn't be in that school. But, if you were strong, you would get stronger. And so we were strong, and so we got stronger from them. And that's how we basically became.
Let me ask a question, because what you just mentioned there, this is way beyond kicking and punching. This is way beyond being a martial arts instructor. This is being an extended family member, like an uncle a crazy uncle that does karate that's looking out for you more ways than one. And that's a disciple as opposed to just a student, and which is incredible because, for those of you who were fortunate to be brought up by your father, which I wasn't, when you get someone who as a mentor, it's a special relationship. But this guy here is literally teaching you or positioning you and the rest of your clan, your crew, your party, your clique, your school, your dojo, to become legends. So you mentioned Van Cleef. Did Over Watson ever go there? Can you mention a few more names? You mentioned Earl Monroe. My God, that's Nisei. And
we used to fight all of the great warrior schools. I call them the great warrior schools. The Nisei Goju, the Harlem Goju, back in the days. With so many Tong dojos. Dr. Supreme Master and Dr. Moses Powell. We didn't really fight too many of his students because they were more jiu-jitsu type clan people, which I really never believed in at that time, because I was taught you can't fight,
but Little John was producing it. Little John was showing that thing worked.
Yeah, that's the point I was getting ready to get to. Until there was one legend that came out of that school. Actually, it was more than one. There was two few of them came out there because the Grandmaster Lumumba, he was also a great legend that came out, and also Grandmaster Jeffrey. Those are the only three I knew as great fighters that really came out of the Sanuka school that was really powerful during those days. But Lil John really put the school on the map for us fighting. But Lil John was basically going back and forth from Tong Dojo and Sanuka.
Okay.
He was going back and forth. That's why the VSK came. That's where the Kumute Ryu came, because he was basically working with both, with the Supreme Grandmaster Moses Powell and Supreme Grandmaster George Cofield and Supreme Grandmaster Thomas the Puppet. So those who John was training during that particular time.
I have a question only because I don't know. Rest in peace to Fred Hamilton. Wasn't he also doing Shotokan in Harlem? Just because I want to get some type of
yeah, that was listening. Master Hamilton is one of my instructors. I'm a 4th degree black belt in Master Hamilton. I was a 4th degree black belt in Master Hamilton, as I was a 4th degree black belt under Abdul Musawir, which is Monroe model. So I trained basically both of them. But you know what I'm saying? But see, I trained the Yomokwan system too. The Yomokwan system, which came from Minkyu Pai, which is Monroe's. I'm gonna use the word Abdul Musawir because that's his name now. That was his instructor. So I started training with him, his instructor. You see? So me and Bennett became two different type of black belts under Monroe because he was teaching two different styles. People don't know that back in those days. He was teaching Yomokwan and he was teaching Shotokan. He never taught me Shotokan. He taught me Yomokwan. You see? He taught me the Yomokwan system, which is a Korean-Japanese system. And he taught pure Shotokan to Bennett.
That's incredible. That's incredible because today they call it mixed martial arts, but martial arts has always been combined. That's just a sport that they call mixed martial arts. But that, you know what? And again, just because I fancy myself as a martial arts historian, I just had a conversation just before you with a guy named John the Tividat. And, you know, that was one of Chuck Norris' top fighters of all time, you know. And these are the people that I promised to bring. I'm going coast to coast because there's no separation of styles or close to me. You know, I've always been, as you know, a person that represented New York, but I go anywhere in the world doing that. So I want to make sure that my elders and so-called, you know, pioneers and legends get their due process. But I want people to hear it from them. So you're dropping some major bombs over here, and I'm going to put myself on mute again because, my gosh, you're doing a phenomenal job. You don't need me.
Well, you know, it's like this, you know, like we all got a story to tell, you know, and it's just that basically we just need a platform to tell it. And see, you know, the Creator's going to bless you because you're applying a platform, because this is information that's what is going to heal this martial nation, the martial art nation, because that's all we are. We are one nation, you know what I'm saying, whether we're from the east, the west, the north, or the south. You know, we're all doing the same thing, which is really supposed to teach the discipline and the science of life skills, not just martial skills, life skills. You see, because the highest form of martial arts is spiritual, the lower part is physical. And this is where we got to go, because this is why we always say each one teach one, each one reach one, because we got to teach each other so we can reach each other, take each other out of the ignorant state that we're in, so we can get past this savage type of mentality we got and come into a more refined human mentality. You see, that's what I'm about. That's where the birth of Mutakabbir, the peaceful warrior, came from.
That's the real deal. And you know, just for the heck of it, since you guys know that I was brought up with the hip hop culture too. You know, Bambaataa did the same thing with the Zulu Nation when he was breaking down knowledge, peace, equality, and a whole bunch of stuff. He schooled us on what was supposed to be values of the family and respect and everything in there. So, pretty incredible, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to have to ask you a question because this is obviously not going to be a one-time shot here because you've got so much information. If it's possible to continue on that route, I'm being cognizant of the time because I know that you're on a really, really tight schedule. But can you continue there and maybe stop at what became at least the beginning of Swam? Because right now you got me in this whole, I wish I had popcorn, you know. But so let me shut up and hear it.
Let me try to summarize things real quick, how and move it up round it forward how we came into Abdul Mutakabbir from Barry Jackson. See, Barry Jackson, like I said, that was during the time of Monroe and Bennett. During those times. And so eventually what happened was those were the times when I used to fight at Sunnyside Gardens, what we call the arena of death, or the arena of hurt, the arena of pain, because they used to keep 4 or 5 ambulances in the back of everybody getting their ribs broke, their nose broke, or something that was getting broken every week. Somebody's getting carried out there in the back on the ambulance. You see? So these were the times when the Kareem Abdul School was known as KA system and all these other great systems, and they used to put almost 10, 15, 20 fighters in one tournament. And all these guys was gunners. They were vicious fighters. And it was only the time when we was coming up in Monroe School, it was only 3 or 4 of us because we didn't have a lot of students, just me and Bennett, T. Taylor, and Byron Clark, and Monroe. Maybe us 4, us 5. So that's how we fought. But, I always had to fight in the heavyweight because I was basically the tallest or the heaviest of the 3, but I was really a lightweight. So basically, what happened was that's how we got our reputation strong. In those days, you didn't fight 2 guys to make it to the finals. You almost fight damn near 20 guys to make it to the final because when you lined up side to side, when you look behind you, it was damn near 15, 20 guys behind you. And so you had to, in reality, you had to go through at least 8 of those guys to basically get to the finals. And once you get to the finals and so forth, that's when the fight really started. So then that was one tournament, but then the next day you go fight again. So that was Saturday and Sunday, every day, every weekend. We were fighting like that. You know what I mean? So, fighting was basically in those days was in your blood. So, even the East Coast, even the West Coast fighters thought we were crazy because all we did was just put tape on our knuckles and so forth. And in those days, Moses Powell and George Corfield and those guys said, listen, they'd check your mouth and check your groin and said, man, make sure you didn't have a mouthpiece. Make sure you didn't have a groin cup. Because they say you don't wear those things because in reality you wouldn't wear those things. You had to learn to fight without those things. You see? So that was the beginning of the East Coast way of fighting, and you didn't move around like with finesseful like Jerry did, and move around finesseful like Mutakabbir did. You didn't move like that. You did you fought in I call it square stance or tank stance. You dug deep, and you just like the Japanese sword, dug deep and rooted yourself. And it was only thing that basically was throwing with the front kick, round kick, or Morashigari. That was the round kick or a reverse punch or a lunge punch. That was it, or backhand. So, those were the things how we fought in those days. A little space, and it was just like, boom, whoever got off first, just like that sword. And you had to show heart because you had such great judges. I mean, imagine you having Moses Powell, your Chief Simba, and you have Master Hamilton in one corner, George Cofield in another corner, Thomas Pup in another corner, Major Wallace in another corner. Imagine that. All these great supreme masters, every time they judging you, fighting, you stand and you got to fight. You see, so that's how it was when I came up.
Even Grandmaster Aaron Banks was so hardcore, man. That guy was crazy, man. I loved him because he was the same way.
Aaron Banks had no choice, basically, being around that type of energy. He had no other choice. He had to have that. He had to be crazy to be around that type of energy. And I commemorate him for the Oriental world of self-defense because it wasn't for him, again, there would have been no platform for the East Coast of martial arts to be seen. You see, it would have been no platform.
You guys who are listening, please understand this. It was East Coast and West Coast only because the media and the magazines were on the West Coast. So what ended up happening from 1975 up until about 1986, technically, on the national rated, the closest thing to anyone being rated nationally was the top 20, and there was gentlemen like Mutakabbir, and they got a chance to go. So I'm fast forwarding just a little bit because I have an interesting audience. These gentlemen had a chance to compete at the U.S. Open back, I think, in '79 or something like that. And they went to the Battle of Atlanta. I mean, at least. So as being a fan of martial arts, I always wanted to identify in the magazines where any New Yorkers were at. And there weren't too many New Yorkers that were traveling out of New York, but because New York had its own world. And everyone who we talked to, including John Nativitat today, attested that, yeah, those guys were crazy. So continue. Take it away, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so fast forward, going into becoming Mutakabbir, when I retired, as Barry Jackson, I retired for 7 years at a competition. All I did was just train, you know what I mean? And at that time, I began into the Nation of Islam. When I came into the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us basically we could get involved in anything of sport-like activity. So, I love the religion more than I love my art. So I went out of the martial world as far as competing, but I never stopped training. So then when Abdul Muhammad passed and his son came in, Imam Wafdi Muhammad, he came in 1975. At that particular time, I was a trainer of the FOI, the Fruit of Islam. And I was training them, and I was a street courier selling papers and things like that there. And when Imam Wafdi Muhammad came in, he had basically took all of the couriers, the street couriers, and he had given us our name. So he had given me the name of Abdul Mutakabbir, which means the servant of the majestic, superb, the independent one who rises to all occasions. And then he said one day, and he was speaking, not to me, but I thought it was directly to me. He said, we need to get back up and go back into that what we used to be before the nation, and we need to inject peace into that atmosphere and become an example of good in that atmosphere. So I sat there in the Musalla, which is the prayer hall, and I sat there, and tears came out of my eyes. And I asked the Creator, I said, Ya Allah, I said, bless me to go back in the martial art world and become a great champion. But don't give me fame and prestige. Let me be known in the hearts of men. And I said that 10 times to myself. I said, let me first be known in the hearts of men. I don't want fame and prestige. I want to be known in the hearts of men. So what I did, I went to Master Hamilton's school. And I went to his school, and I asked him, I said, can we do a barter program? Can we do a barter here? And he said, if I teach your students, can I just work it out in your school? And he said, absolutely. He was honored for me to come here because he knew what type of person I was. So he had a magazine that was right by his window. And I picked the magazine up and I looked at it, the Karate Illustrated. And I seen in the magazine that Earl Bennett, #1, all these other fighters, #2, 3, 4, all these great warriors. And so I looked at the magazine. I said to Master Hamilton, I said, within 1 year time from here, I'm going to be known as the second best fighter in New York. And he looked at me and laughed at me. And he said, why not #1? I said, because I'll never fight my brother, Earl Bennett. So he said, and so he was on the phone. I was banging the bag one day, hitting the bag, and him and Grandmaster Ed Bowles was talking. And he said, I got one of the guys here, Abdul Mutakabbir.
The Ninja Turtles, baby, the Ninja Turtle system.
Yep, the Ninja Ed Bowles and those guys. And so he was talking about me, and he was cracking smiles about me. They were like, shit, you don't know how these guys are vicious and stuff like that. So I started hitting the bag harder when I listened. It just infuriated me more. And so what happened was, I used to teach his students. And so then what he did was that one day I saw him. He called me on a Sunday, and he had all his fighters with him in his car. And he said, listen, I'm going to go to the tournament today. You need to go to this tournament and get involved in this tournament. I said, I'm not ready yet. I still need about another couple of months. He said, well, you want to be a fighter? You want to prove yourself? Go in this tournament. So, I'm the type of guy, you touch my ego. I'm like, that's a warrior in me. Like, I was always a fighter, I said, all right, well, no problem. He said, yeah, well, you got to drive your own car. I had to drive my own car. So I had a raggedy car. So I drove that car all the way up to Washington to, I forgot the brother that used to give the tournaments all the time. What's his name? I forgot his name, but you know him.
Robert Everhart. Rest in peace to him. It had to be that.
Everhart. That's his name, Everhart.
There you go, baby. I'm glad I was right.
Yep. Whatever. So we went all the way to Everhart's tournament. So when I get into the door, show you how Grandmaster Hamilton is. He's like a martial art bully. So that guy, as soon as I get into the door to do the application, he told all the black belts, everybody, he said, I don't know why you're filling out these applications. There's only one grand champion here, and that's him right there. Put me on the spot. And I'm the only one from New York, and I got my kufi on. You know what I mean? That's your prayer cap. And man, and all them guys looked at me up and down like, who the hell is this guy? And my heart was jumping like my heart, boom, 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 beating like a rabbit. I said, these guys would have killed me, man, because I wasn't psychologically ready yet. So anyway, I signed this application, and I goes in the Kung Fu division. I compete against Christian. What's her name? Christian. I forgot her name. Christian. The European girl that was real good. Christian Lock or whatever.
Cynthia Rothrock.
Cynthia Rothrock, yeah, and Dennis Brown and Tyrus Giselle and all these guys, and I wound up.
Legends, all of them.
Yeah. I took 3rd place in that. Then I went into weapons. I took 2nd place, and then it came to fighting. Full story. I'm gonna tell you right now how I first started fighting as Abdul Mutakabbir. So what happened was they called me up. They said, Abdul Mutakabbir, whatever your name is, just come on down. So I came up. I came up and I had my kufi on. So they had this guy who was way up in the bleachers. The bleachers that make them loud noise. So this guy had like goggles on, and this guy name was Larry Holmes. And the fighter, and that was during the time Larry Holmes, the fighter, was the champion. So this guy was simply these pretty girls just sitting up there. And I was like, everybody looked at me like, man, who the hell is this guy? I was all by myself. I had nobody with me. I'm just by myself. Me and Master Hamilton, a few of his guys, but this guy wasn't around me. So I'm by myself, So this guy came down from the bleachers and said, Larry Holmes and Abdul. This guy came, right out there, got him from my face. He said, This guy was maybe 2 inches taller than me and super big, muscular and everything. I looked at this dude. I said, man, this guy's going to kill me, man. You know what I mean? So my heart was beating the kid fast. So anyway, so it told y'all made us spar. And so I was hitting this guy with everything in my mind. But physically, I wasn't moving. This guy was whipping my behind because it was continuous fighting. And then Master Hamilton walked past me. He said, Mutakabbir, get yourself together. I turned around, looked down to my left, and I turned back around. This guy hit me right in my nose. Boom! And I turned around. I said, Allahu Akbar. Yeah! Like that. And, man, our spirit, man, became what you call a superhero. I became like the Hulk. I destroyed that guy. And when I destroyed him, I destroyed the next guy, and the next guy, and the next guy, and the next guy, and the next guy, about 8 of them. And at the end of the day, I was the grand champion. That's my first grand champion as Abdul Mutakabbir. And then from there, I went to
Wow. And you know something? Going over to Washington, D.C. from New York, that was a big deal. Years after, because I saw the magazines that you guys had gone, there was a gap in between with New Yorkers didn't go down there for a while. I went and I took Tony Morris and a bunch of people like Kendo Allah, today known as Abdul Aziz, and Jonas Nunes. And I said, man, we go, and Time Up, the last drag, I said, man, we going down there. And that's why we continued that route. Your guys were the ones that were really breaking barriers and going into other states to test your skills. But Hamilton, rest in peace for him, set you up for success. Here you go, sir.
That's what it was. Yeah. It set me up for success. So then at that time, there was another great warrior that was in there's in New York, and he had held 7 titles, in 1 year. What's his name? Dark-skinned brother, for a heavyweight brother. He was like an unorthodox type of guy. I forgot his name.
It has to be Ron Henderson.
Man, brother, you're on it, man.
No, because let me tell you something. You got to understand this. And again, the reason why Ron Henderson sticks out is because he's the first person to fight in modern style techniques. He dropped his hands. He'll be at a distance. He looked like a black bozo. His hair was down. His belly was fat. And like Louis Ruiz instructor. But this guy could be. I seen him fight against Ramon Smith, PAL when Lamar Thornton and King Valencia threw a tournament, and Michael Smith was there, Speedy Wilson was there, all these rated guys were there, and this freaking old man beat everybody. Yep. Henderson. All right, so let me shut up.
He held 7 titles in 1 year. Nobody broke his record. He was like a great fighter, coming up in the heavyweight. So I said, man, eventually I'm going to run into this guy because he was eliminating everybody and I was eliminating everybody. I was the new kid on the block, but everybody knew I was the old dog, though. Everybody knew I was the old dog as Abdul Mutakabbir. They just knew I was just somebody new, but they didn't know I was Savage Jackson. So only those who knew me was the old school guys knew me. That's why when I came in, I was doing the Kung Fu. Nobody knew that, So anyway, so when I fought him and I beat him for his grand champion, and then eventually, I had held, 13 grand champions in 1 year. I held 13 grand championships in 1 year, and then I fought my greatest, most prestigious grand championship that I love. It's called the Yin Yee's Cup. And the reason why I love the Yin Yee's Cup is because, I was able to defeat some great fighters in that particular cup for that. And that was like one of the most ones that stand out was Billy Blank, and Billy Blanks and, Steve Valencia and, a lot of other great warriors and so forth. But, that meant a lot to me. But it wasn't about, for me, just the fight and beating guys or guys beating me, but it was the camaraderie and it was the humbleness and the honor and how we fought with each other. You know what I mean? It was like an honor. So you look forward to fight these kind of guys. But anyway, I think I skipped the channel real quick because you asked me the question, how did I come into the Swamp? So if you want me to go back to that, I'll tell you how we got in the Swamp.
Yeah, if you go back, just so that we have the real history as told by you, not as told by someone who may say it wrong.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. Well, how we got in the Swamp there was another legendary warrior that basically that was in Kung Fu, and I seen him compete, and he became a student under an individual that was very, very, very good in Kung Fu, you know. And I didn't know this guy, but eventually he knew me, and eventually we began to communicate, and we all kind of like got together, you know what I mean? And that was my brother at that time, Sheldon Wilkins. We came together, and he was training at that particular time. His original teacher was Peter Urban on the Goju, but then he started training Kung Fu on the George Clayton. So all three of us we locked together, and we basically we put the New York Kung Fu on the map. There was other individuals too was out there. I think his name was Benson Lee. He was one other great one that was out there.
You had Benson Lee. You had Paul Brazil doing the kickboxing, and then but Benson Lee was really the main guy in terms of forms, and that's where Ross Luck used to come down and train, learning the Eagle Claw from Benson Lee. But not too many people were put in, like you said, put in New York. Now, of course, you had Hewitt Chamberlain, but he wasn't really competing because he was another type of dude with the Fu Jia Pai. But pretty much that was it. And the Kung Fu that was around, Mitchell. Mitchell. Ralph Mitchell, okay.
Yeah, but see, the only bangers.
That was it.
The only bangers of Kung Fu was me and Sheldon. See, we were the bangers. We were the fighters because we originally wasn't Kung Fu people. We were karate people. See, we were karate people doing Kung Fu, not Kung Fu people doing karate. That was the difference. See, those guys was Kung Fu people, pure Kung Fu. But I wasn't Kung Fu. You know, I was karate. I come training in karate on Monroe and, you know, and Ming Q Pai and Master Hamilton for years and years. So I've been into Kung Fu, but I never really understood what Kung Fu was until one of my students came and told me, you know, there's a guy down there just as good as Monroe, and this guy, he knows what he's doing. You need to go check him out. And that individual is a great master right now, and a lot of people don't even know about him. He's an unsung hero. His name is Raymond Nelson. That was my teacher. You know, Raymond Nelson is a very powerful Kung Fu master. Only those who know in Kung Fu deep know of this particular individual, Raymond Nelson. He's the only one I knew that could put his hand through a human body. This guy had real iron palm, had real still fingers. You know, he's a praying mantis master of the northern style of praying mantis. So I started training with him, you know what I mean, when I was in the, you know, and that would help me develop my system, which was called the Fujika boxing system. Fu for Kung Fu, Ju for Jiu-Jitsu under Moses Powell, and Ko for Karate on Monroe and Ming Q Pai. And Sheldon's system was called the Tatsutora, which means the Iron Tiger system, and where basically his creativity from Peter Urban system. So we got together, and one day he called me up about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He said, "I got a name for our school." I said, "What's that?" "Swam." I said, "Swam." I hung up the phone on him. He said, "Call me back." He said, "No, Swam. Sheldon Wilkins, Abdul Mutakabbir." "Oh, man, I got a ring to it. That's tight. Yeah, I like that. Sheldon Wilkins, Abdul Mutakabbir." So that was our first acronym of the SWAM. And then later on, I went deeper. I said, we call it Spiritual Warriors Against Madness. Soldiers with a mission. Soldiers with a mission. Strong, wise, achieving mind.
Man, you was kicking rhymes, man. Kicking rhymes when you was judging. Did you know what freaked me out? Now, remember, I come from originally Sang-Soo Tiger Kim, right? So we're talking about straight up and down Taekwondo. And then I go to a tournament in 1977, and it's crazy. It's off the hook. No one's bowing the way I was used to the Taekwondo. I smelled Tiger Bomb all over the place, and pretty much there was a bunch of gangs, you know, this gang, that gang. And I was freaking out, but I understood gangs coming from Spanish Harlem. I really knew gangs, you know, my renegades of Harlem was in the family. So, but when you guys were, before you did your forms or your weapons, you had an entire speech, which is basically what you're trying to say. Give me an example of that. I mean, you guys used to kill it, man, like MCs almost.
Yeah, we say SWAM is the artistry, simplicity, and the natural sciences of various forms of martial art, such as karate, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, and kickboxing. We believe under no certain terms, violence is strictly forbidden, except in the instant of legitimate self-defense. We all come in peace, but we are prepared to take you in pieces. Us.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. You put some music to it. And I think I have seen a bunch of the stuff that you actually years after put into hip hop or to some tracks. And if I remember correct, I saw that a few years ago, and I was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about, because that New York flavor and style and attitude that comes from Harlem is something that people just cannot understand it unless they're from there, you know? And I've always been a fan. I don't care. Never been a player hater. You know, people do their thing. I'm like, yeah, do your thing, baby.
Yeah. Well, you know, like one thing about especially, and I'm just going to say New York, because everybody have their own particular way, but we have a certain type of swagger in whatever we do, whether playing basketball, football, martial arts, whatever. It's just basically it's just something about the atmosphere in the New York City, you know, or in the East Coast. Put it that way. We had a different type of flavor. So it's like anybody basically got involved in anything that they did, like yourself. You got in Taekwondo, but you flavorized it. You made it almost like your personality in your way. You was like a Taekwondo fighter, but you don't look like a Taekwondo fighter. You look like, you know, like your own particular way in doing Taekwondo. Because my whole philosophy is this: I believe all martial arts are good for where they came from. I believe karate is good for where it came from. Kung Fu is good for where it came from. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is good for where they came. They're good for where they came from, because they can operate real good in those environments where they came from. But see, when you come to the East Coast, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's a different type of mentality. It's a different type of spirituality. It's a different type of, you know, a whole type of energy. So you got to basically kind of like take the arts that you learn, and you got to almost like, you know, entrench it into your personal character and make it part of the energy of your environment. So that's where we came up with these creative styles like the K system and, you know, the Swam system and the Kung Fu Pai system and all these other systems. It's like we still study traditional art, but we put our own flavor. That's where the Sanukas came to. The Sanukas, what's I call sidewalk fighting. You know, Moses Powell, he's the first one really started dealing with what we call the brutal arts of grabbing and snatching and joint manipulation and so forth, where he put like a certain type of swagger in it. So we all had that type of finesse, you know, whether it came from, you know, Jerry Fatmanez or Abdul Mutakabbir or Abdul Musawera or Manuel Morrow or whoever. Even when we did karate, our katas were different than everybody, because the Japanese from Japan used to hear about it. They used to come in there to watch us. The Koreans would come and watch us. Everybody would come and watch us. And they would mimic us, and they would go back and basically, give us our props. Not directly, but indirectly they had to, because they know that we took something and made it to fit us. And that's what the beauty about it. The only problem, one reason why we never really evolved, I truly believe, as a martial arts family, especially in the East Coast, because we didn't have the intelligence. I'm talking about our leaders. They didn't have the intelligence to understand how to be able to, harness this power, harness this energy, and take it to the next level. You see? Yeah, it was hard to congregate them all, because everyone was in individual tribes. So the chieftains didn't know how to interconnect, even though people tried, but it wasn't easy, because when it was all said and done, you know, that village of New York, man, you know, call it what you want. The Bronx is separated, Brooklyn is separated, Manhattan is separated, and that to me was like Okinawa. You had the different areas, and then the hip hop attitude came in, which was part of the culture, even, you know, they're intertwined. I'm that young guy. I'm getting ready to be 50 years old, right? So I was 50 years young. So I'm looking at you guys fighting. I'm reading about you competing. What your style was so different to me was that you was like kickboxing. You was faking the reposition. You would do a move where you would fake, go to your right, reposition, almost like Sugar Ray Leonard, and then come back with the punch. But you would hit him with a roundhouse kick right after. I have seen you punch dudes to the chest and have them quit. So that whole thing there, to me, it was very intimidating, and Sheldon Wilkins was very elusive, you know, but strong as hell. He had arms as freaking thick as my legs, and his legs were as thick as a cow's. You know, I mean, freaking powerful dude, and it makes sense that he came from Goju. So you guys started to add a different flow when you learn Kung Fu. And guys, listen, please understand this. When he talked about grand championships, we used to defend our titles, guys. You know, so you would win, and then the next year you would come and defend your title. So you would fight one fight afterwards, because you're the king of the hill.
that doesn't exist anymore. You don't have the defending champions no more. But that was one of the things where I was fascinated because many of the tournaments that he just mentioned, I won grand champion there too. And I got a chance to defend my titles as a teenager, which is, I don't know how that happened. I was really blessed to be able to survive fighting these monsters, But let's just talk about a little transition of what happened in terms of tournaments around the 1980s, And for whatever's worth, I'm just curious. And guys, I can do this. This is my show. So he could talk about this thing because I want to find out when was the first time you seen the skinny crackhead-looking kid, the fast feet, whatever you call him, and what happened there.
Well, I always admired your generation that was coming because y'all was coming right behind our generation. You and Ty Mark and Tony and those guys and so forth. And y'all like kind of stood out. You know what I mean? And y'all had a good spirit. And I always said to myself, because I seen someone, I don't know if it was you or Ty Mac, but I don't think it was you. I think it was Ty Mac. Ty Mac asked this black belt a question. It may have been Ty Mac or another, but it wasn't an individual. He's a white belt at the time. You know what I mean? Because I remember you guys came up. I seen y'all grow. I seen y'all whole transformation as y'all grow. But I remember I was on the side one day, and I seen one of the young brothers ask the black belt information, and the black belt said, "What's your rank?" And he said, "Why?" He said, "You can't talk. Something like you can't talk to me." Like kind of dissed him. And I seen the brother. It hurt his heart. So I came to him right immediately. I came to him, and I said, "Listen, brother, you can ask me any type of question you want." I said, "You can always talk to me." I said, "You my brother before any rank." I said, "You are a friend to me before. If you were my student, you would be a friend before you would be a student." So I always put that type of energy in front. I was different about us. And
always. There's no question. Let me just say this. I remember being at the Oriental Wall of Self-Defense in 1976 when my instructor, Sansu Tiger Kim, rest in peace, was demonstrating. And I'm not even going to say who the person is because when I think about it, it gets me upset. But I asked someone for their autograph. I have never in my entire life asked anybody for an autograph. But I happened to be in the bathroom. And the guy said to me, "Can I even take a piss?" And my attitude as a little, I was 10 years old. I was like, man, fuck you, man. I don't give a damn. Because I was still, a kid. But it broke my heart. And you were the opposite. What you used to do was so interesting. You spoke with a soft, caring voice, but your facial expression wasn't consistent. I'm like, what the hell? He just said something nice. Oh man, that thing was so funny to me because you always say words of wisdom, dropping bombs. But when I looked at your face, I wasn't sure if you meant it. Not if you meant it. I wasn't sure if you was mad at me. That's why I try to make you laugh.
Yeah, brother. But those were some great days, man. Those days, man, we could borrow them, man. They would be like it would help this generation even more to grow and understand the importance, of unity and the true spirit of Bushido in the art world. Because this commercial thing has came and it's good in a sense where you got more people on the street out of the drug dens and in the dojos. But it's kind of bad in a way where it's like, it's like the spirit part of the martial arts seems to have been compromised a little bit with just I would call the gladiator part. Well,
listen, this here, okay, let me explain what this is. This is an opportunity for me to have and pay homage to the people who are alive, not after they pass away, because it doesn't help too much, I want to make sure that people understand that we stand on the shoulders of giants. I want them to understand that pioneers and legends are walking around every day. And I'm talking about martial arts in particular. I was recently at the Battle of Atlanta, and they interviewed me for two different, what would be medias today. And they walked past at least 15 people that they should have talked to first. And my heart broke. I was like, this is crazy. How could, these are people that I would ask questions to. So since I've been fortunate enough in the past to become some type of a marketer, I've been able to still keep myself relevant and in the history. But I said, no way in life am I going to let this thing happen. It was a disrespect for me, and I said, what can I do about it? So my goal is to get about 99 other people to do what I'm doing. So like that, we can maybe touch on just some of the people who deserve to have their voice heard. So there's too many people. There's too many people. Today I'm doing 4 different power talks. And I'm talking about from of Natividad is in Las Vegas. You're in New York. Tony Lopez is in Texas. And then tonight I have a young lady is in Philadelphia. If there was 100 other people doing this, then maybe we'll get a chance to talk to all those people. Because you just dropped about 5, 6 different names that I didn't even have on the list yet. So this is my way to showing people that not only just giving the homage, it's not just that. It's understanding there's a timeline, there's a generation gap. These people, if you get a chance to listen and learn from them, oh my God, they'll save you so many years because they're here to help. They are elders. They are brothers and sisters and cousins and so on and so forth. And we absolutely are a nation, and we are family as dysfunctional as every family. We prove it. but we really are. So what I want to do, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to ask you 2 things. Will it be possible to sometime in the future to visit you again? Because I know that we only touched the tip of the iceberg. Would that be possible?
Absolutely, brother. I'm with you all the way.
Oh, that I appreciate. And now, and then the only other thing is, in your parting ways, in your last words, who do you want to give some credit, props, or give your shout out, to the people who you want to?
Well, I would like to give a shout out to all great warriors and so forth that are doing something productive besides just kicking and punching, but being able to helping their community to be able to get rid of a lot of the blight that's in the community. The ignorance and the foolishness that's, these are the real heroes. The real heroes are those who basically go face to face with those in the community that really need and be able to assist them to be able to just make their days a little brighter. I want to give a shout out to you because the fact that you've given a platform for great warriors like me to be able to express myself and to be able to go out so other people can be able to learn from that what I express so they can be able to, to grow and be able to, perpetuate that, what they have learned from me to give to others. So it's a cycle of loving. It's a cycle of learning. It's a cycle of each one teach one, each one reach one. And that's it.
That's incredible. The only other thing, sir, is this. In the famous words of Crazy Puerto Rican Bronx, sir, when I say AB, you say see ya. AB?
See ya.
We out of here. Sir, thank you very much. We are officially ending this conversation right now, and I have been educated, and elated that I did. Sir, from the bottom of my heart, muchas gracias.